You are listening to Two Heels and a Face Wrestling Podcast, a podcast where we believe wrestling is a buffet and there is something there for everyone. Make sure to follow us on Instagram and YouTube at Two Heels and a Face. That is number 2 Heels and a Face. You can also visit our website at twoheelsandaface.com. That is number 2 heelsandaface.com. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe.
Era, 2 heels and a face.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Twos and Face Wrestling Podcast. Chris, that was a new intro.
That was a new intro, new platform, new way of recording, at least for the time being. But here we are. What do you think, Charlie? You hadn't previewed that, so live reactions here.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. Background music maybe a tad loud over your voice, but that's just the way it was coming in for me. But yeah, no, it's great. I mean, I think I've grown so accustomed to our intro, and I like it, and it's what it needs to be. That, you know, it was like this epic music started in the background. I was like, what is this? But that's why you're the glue that holds this podcast together. We are still going to be using our same platform, but we just needed to sub for a little bit, and you like uploaded all the assets into here, and that's why you are you, and that's why this podcast has survived 8 years. And yeah, how you doing?
Hey, I try to make us look good, even if we don't sound good, you know.
No, you do a great job at that.
Appreciate it. Doing well, man. Like I said, trying a few things here, making sure that we're still up and running, and we hit that 300th episode, and right off into the sunset. So making sure that we're still able to record, and today we're just kind of gonna reminisce just a little bit on our previous episode.
Yeah, it's a re-release, and it's funny that when you're listening to the when I went back and listened to it, we didn't even have an intro. Remember, we just used to use like a custom song every time. It would be like the person's entrance theme or like whatever we thought at the time.
Yeah, a song that would kind of go along with the episode, or usually we try to go with the entrance theme music of whoever we're speaking with. Um, and I gotta say, when I put play and re-listen to that episode, that theme music definitely brought me back to the LSA.
Absolutely. I mean, I can't not hear that theme music without thinking of Isaias Velazquez, and that's the episode that we're re-releasing today. This is one of our favorite episodes. It's an episode we got so much great feedback on. It's for a podcast that's usually when we interview someone, at least for the first time, it's usually pretty structured. And we will like go down certain rabbit holes, but we usually have an agenda made, right? This one kind of felt like just maybe 12 bullet points of stuff we wanted to ask, and it felt looser, and it was in person. So I think the flow of it is really good.
Yeah, and this was one of the usually when it's a first time guest, we try to take them down the wrestling buffet line. And in this case, it wasn't that. It was
It's true.
actually just like, let's sit down, turn on the mics, and we have you on. Like, I think we had Isaias for probably about what 45 minutes or so before the
Good
beginning
amount.
of a freelance underground show.
Mhm.
So we were in the back. It was dark, flickering light.
We did this episode
And
in the dark, like the dark.
yeah,
Like it was like only the computer light. Yeah, that flickering light that we talk about, and like our computer lights. So I
yeah,
like was looking at Isaias most of this interview, but I kind of just saw like the sheen off his, or like the reflection off his glasses. That's all I remember kind of from this interview, and there was just no lights in this one back area, but it was like the quietest area. So that's, I think, why we chose it.
um, I mean, I think it was the
And
furthest
there was like an
away.
outlet thing too, right? It wasn't
Yes,
maybe
we
the
also.
one near an outlet.
Yeah, we couldn't let the computer die, because then then all of our audio would have been lost. But it was cool, man. I mean, I think and it was cool that we had kind of built a rapport with ICS before even just sitting down with them, because I think you alluded to that at the beginning of the episode. We had not seen ICS in many interview like or any podcasts before, really. So it was cool to get to know him at that level, for him to share some of his stories. Um, and scary moments in his career and leaps that he just took to follow his dream.
Yeah, he says it on the episode too, but he's like, people think I'm a dick. And I think it's just
Uh-huh.
because he is a naturally soft spoken person. And I wouldn't say it's not that he's not, he's definitely charismatic. It's not that he's not, but he's not like bubbly. You know what I
Right.
mean? So
So when
people have
you
the impression of that, like, have a hard time coming up and talking to him. Like I don't know, like maybe that's kind of the impression that I got from him. But like the coolest, chillest dude of all time, and like you'll hear it in this episode, and like kind of like he's just like he hasn't been overexposed in the podcast scene, so it was really cool to like see him open up a little bit, if that makes sense.
yeah, I mean, and he talks about how he gets mostly complimented when he's doing heel work, right? And I
Yeah,
think it's that character comes through. He looks very confident in the ring, and then when he's off the ring and he's out there, because he's a quiet person, that doesn't mean he's a dick, right? Like he's just
yeah,
a
exactly.
quiet person, and it kind of like feeds that perception. But dude is super talented, super cool, down to earth, and just just easy to talk to. I think that's why we also went in with some bullet points and knowing what we wanted to touch on and just let the conversation flow. And I think that was a good call on our end and not having to bring in that wrestling buffet line for that episode. I like the fact
Yeah,
that it was just turn on the mics and talk.
because I think he was such a vet at that point too, that
Mhm.
like the buffet line works a little bit better with like Quintero, who we interviewed, who's like still in the early stages of his career. Um, so yeah, it was one of the maybe the more naturally sounding episodes where it sounded like three guys just shooting the shit. I think that's what I liked about it. And once you kind of that takes the guest being that way too. So like shout out to Isaias. But once you kind of have an episode like that, um, it just feels really good re-listening to it because it just sounds like three chaps catching up, kind of. Um, there's a couple of funny things in this episode. This was recorded late 2019, like December 2019,
December 2019. Yeah.
and there's a moment in this episode where I say the phrase. This is like I think it's near the end. I say the phrase 2020 is going to be a big year.
Well, damn, Charlie. And
I think I jinxed the entire world in that moment. But there's a couple instances like that. But and then a couple things will take you back to like the War of the Gender show, which I completely forgot about.
Mhm.
And then he's already with Kylie at this point. Obviously, they're not like married or there's no kid in the picture, but like we talk about that a little bit. So it's a good mix of like older stuff, but it doesn't like super feel outdated. You just kind of reminisce on like, oh yeah, I remember that.
Right. There's a reference to his feud with Pat Onyx.
Yeah, exactly. And I like
Mhm.
forgot about that. Oh, his faction. There's kind of a
And
funny thing
there
too.
Yeah, I mean, that is very timely. We've been talking about, when I heard the name, Dean Jacobs, I was like, "That's the guy,"
Yeah,
over, with Ego, where Ego shares a story about he wrestled him and then he just kind of after kicking Ego's ass, he just kinda left the picture, but yeah, during that time, Isaiah's had we call them the cronies, he said they weren't the cronies, but it was, Dean Jacobs, and do you remember the name of the other guy?
yeah. Ashton Braven, I think.
Yes.
Yes. Who I think
Mhm.
I think that guy might have been like a firefighter or ex-firefighter or something like that.
I believe so.
We
Mhm.
never got to really talk to him too much, but it's funny too because we keep calling him the school, and he's like, no, that's not the nickname. That's not. And then and it's funny too because he's like, yeah, he's like, because they were a good faction, but he's like, yeah, I see us like sticking around and kind of like growing, and then like that faction didn't last. I don't think that lasted much.
It
Well,
didn't
then
last
the
long.
world shut down, you
Yeah.
know. So like the world shut down in 2 months. But yeah, then after COVID, the school. as it were, the faction, not the Freelance Academy, but the faction called the school that we dubbed did not exist going forward too. So there's a couple funny moments like that where it's just like in present day, you're like, yeah, that's not gonna happen. But we're hopeful. He was hopeful. Another thing too I wanted to bring up. I know this intro is going very long. He said one of his goals, you'll hear some other goals on there too. He's like, to have a card full of like each match being having an academy member or like someone he's taught and teached. I wonder, that's had to have happened right now, right? I feel like we need to maybe try and confirm that.
I want to say
when we talk to him next, maybe we try and find a card where it's like, yeah, these are all people that I taught, and like that was his goal came true.
Yeah, I mean, there's some reference also to, and I won't give too much, so you guys hear the story of Isaias Canoli.
Yeah, there's reference to that. Yeah,
But
shout out Elena Black for that. Just gem of a joke.
a great joke.
Yeah.
And we talked about it in our previous episode when we talked about the history of the buffet bracket, right? Like Forza Gear or Forza Athletes, sponsoring that buffet bracket, and they say as the one behind that, and really like wanting to keep that separate. He doesn't want, but knowing that, he's not just talented inside the ring, but outside of the ring also, making kick-ass gear. It's pretty cool to see, and I mean stuff that he's done over the years. Pretty cool gear there, but you'll learn more about that in the episode.
Yeah.
So should we toss it over to the episode here, Charlie?
We should, but before you go, when you're probably listening to this, the finals of the buffet bracket this year are going to be posted, I'm sure, on our socials. So go vote on the final. Alfonso Gonzalez did make the finals, a spoiler, but who is he facing? Is it Sean Logan? Is it Coda? Go vote on the final. Thank you for all your participation in it. There was one person last poll that like I think they almost hit like over 100 votes. They hit over 100 votes when combined. One person almost hit 100 themselves. So the voting has been great. So thank you for the participation on that.
There you go. Make sure you go and vote for this year's buffet bracket winner. We're down to the final, and we're down to the final of this intro. So we're gonna go out and toss it over to that dark match. We call it the dark match interview with Isaias Velazquez. So
all right,
we are in a dark warehouse, Chris. We are bundled up. We have
cold
our jackets
and
on.
dark. There's a flickering light.
What is that flickering light?
I don't know what you're.
The fireflies?
I can't even see what you guys are looking at.
Oh, above us?
Oh,
yes.
Oh, yeah, that flickering. Yeah, I don't know what that is.
Isaias, welcome.
Thank you.
How's it going, man?
I'm doing well. It's going
doing
well.
well?
Yeah. A little bit banged up from last night with my, I guess you could call it war with Pat Monix, Project Monix. But other than that, though, I'm fine.
I saw his hand was all bloody.
Yeah.
Do you have any like any scarring injuries, or are you just mostly sore?
Oh, I'm just sore from head to toe.
You're just sore from head to toe.
Waking up today in the morning was fun.
Okay.
It took a while to wake up. Let's
Okay.
put it that way. A couple aspirins later, fell back asleep, and then I was like, oh, okay, not time to get up. But yeah, nothing like Pat. That guy was bleeding like crazy. So,
Right.
Yeah. Nothing too predominant on me. Just walking around sore like an old man, like I'm 75 years old.
Nice.
Yeah, so, yeah.
And I think it's cool that we have you on because we've been talking about it for a little bit. And I personally want to get to know a lot more about you and just like how you tick. And I don't think I've seen you on a ton of podcasts, so I think it's cool that like you're here and you're given this platform to express how you feel and say things that you want to say.
Yeah.
The match with Monix was a war. How do you feel like that's been like an ongoing storyline? How do you feel like that storyline has been for you as a performer?
That was a storyline that I don't exactly remember. I think it was May that it
Okay,
started.
yeah.
When I eliminated him, and that's like when he finally came back.
Wait, he did a comeback and then you
Yeah, he did the
eliminated him.
comeback in the battle royal.
Right.
We were number 1 and 2, and we eliminated. I eliminated him at the end because he eliminated me. Just
Yeah.
went back in, ball shot, threw him out. I felt like that whole progression was how it should have been.
Okay.
Everything that we did meant something.
Yeah.
The way that it all went about, and it culminated again yesterday, and I felt like we put like the stamp on the whole thing.
Cool.
So it's one of those where I've been part of freelance ever since it started.
Right.
Or the second show, I guess you could technically say. And I've been a part of a couple storylines, like with Craig Mitchell and with like Ali, GPA.
Right.
And that one I felt like was the most hatred-filled feud that I had so far in freelance, and it was
Yeah.
I enjoyed it for lack of a better term.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I didn't enjoy it today in the morning, but yeah.
Well, us as fans, we definitely enjoyed it. And at this point, we still haven't watched the show because we weren't there yesterday.
Yeah.
But we'll definitely go over it. We'll talk about it. And yeah, Charlie mentioned what I hear is it was a war, and seeing Pat's bloody hand.
Yep.
It was just a good graphic just from a social media perspective that told a little bit about that story.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, Freelance has got some good storytelling stuff, right? And they're patient too with the storytelling. So, like you said, I think you kind of hinted at the pace of it was really good, and that takes time. And so, May to now, right?
Yeah.
It takes to build that story. So, the patience paid off. It sounded like.
And
Yeah.
as part of that progression, in that story, you introduced the cronies.
That's what everyone calls it. They are not cronies. They
The
are
school-
students. They're not the school.
We called them the school. James told us that he wanted to call them the academy.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do we have a name for that?
Yeah, let's hear it.
That faction.
Isaias Velazquez, Dean Jacobs, Ashton Braven.
That's the name of the faction.
It's not a faction.
It's not a
just
faction. Okay.
not a
me and my 2 top students.
Because that would be a pretty lengthy name for a
It
faction,
would be.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if that could really fit on a show poster.
No.
No,
We
might
did.
have to-
I know me, Ashton Braven, and Dean Jacobs. Collectively, we're all big fans of hockey.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Big Blackhawks fans. We'll watch Stanley Cups even when the Blackhawks wasn't in it.
Right.
And all of us collectively, we all follow this page on Instagram called Violent Gentleman, and it's a hockey clothing brand.
Okay.
So that was one of the names that we bounced around. We even tried I even tried messaging the company and be like, hey, it would be kind of cool if we could wear your shirts and blah blah blah, and free publicity and everything, and they never got back to us.
Oh, okay.
Wah wah. No. But if we needed to I guess if we were to have ever a name, I would have wanted it to be that.
Okay.
I mean, you never know. There's probably still some time. So
Yeah.
because I don't see them breaking away from me anytime soon. So.
Nice. Yeah, and so that's been a new thing, you've been doing. And so we've seen you as a heel and a face.
Yeah.
This is your healer stuff with, kind of support, leaning on them coming in, disrupting, etc. What do you like better? What do you prefer playing? Do you prefer playing a face or a heel? Because you probably, out of, I think, a lot of people in Chicago are, very middle and can do both. Or maybe that's, versatility, but you could even create a new section where it's just, a middle person. Some people dislike you, some people like you.
Appreciate that. That's
Yeah.
that's a compliment, and I appreciate that. I personally enjoy being a heel.
Okay.
100%. And people like James and Caleb and the people that really know me, they always tell me that my best work is a heel. That
Okay.
I have I emote the most character.
Sure.
Emotions and facial expressions and all sorts of stuff. I don't know when you guys started watching Freelance, but I know when it started, I was a face, and then I ended up turning heel on Craig, and I feel like that first heel run, which led to me winning the belt for the first time,
Right.
and holding it for almost a year, that whole entire heel run I felt like was probably the best, and I'm trying to top myself right now because
Okay.
after that, exactly what you said, where I was almost stuck in the middle.
Okay.
And I know, Matt Nix would always tell me, I would go up to him hey, what do you want me to do? And he's be Isaias. I'm you're not telling me what to do. What do you want me to do? He's just go out there and be yourself. I'm all right. He was like, yeah, just be a dick, but like the fans like you. And I was like, all right. So it got to a point where I told him, I was like, hey man, just let me be a dick again. Like, just let me be heel, like straight heel. Like, I don't want to be the cool heel. I want people to hate me. Like,
Okay.
I want to do those things. Like,
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of a lost art as of late, where a lot of people go out there and they be heel, but they want to be the cool guy heel, where like, like, hey, like I'm a bad guy, but cheer for me. And it's
Right.
like, no, like the true heels are the ones that like fans are waiting for you in the parking lot and waiting to beat the crap out of you. Like,
Yeah.
that's the kind of heel stuff that I want to do.
When you did the last, because my first freelance show was Ali's last show,
Yeah,
okay.
The
Yeah,
same
yeah,
bottom
yeah,
lounge.
the
Yeah.
three-way.
that was
with-
right when I started to be like right in the middle.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'm like, so that was my intro to freelance, and I saw you, and I'm like, I felt like you were a babyface at that point.
Yeah.
But I mean, I didn't have much story to rely on.
Yeah.
But and I always told Charlie this, like, you were the one that caught my attention and made me want to come back to freelance.
Thank you. That's awesome, man.
So, yeah, like, and you've been one that we've put on the list for a long time and trying to make this happen. So appreciate you making that
absolutely.
happen.
Yeah.
Like when you guys finally asked me, I was like, yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah. Were you just waiting in the wings? Like,
Yeah, I was just like, oh, like that's my big break. I'm waiting for these guys to like finally like hit me up.
Yeah, exactly. But do you think you can be a menacing heel with the nickname Cannoli? Is that a possibility?
I hate her so much. She always, when we're at training and just every show that we're on together, like she always goes up to people like, "Hey, did you tell them about my joke?" I'm like, "No, I did not tell them about your joke. Like it's dumb."
The funny that's the funny part about it, that it's pretty dumb. Like, it doesn't make sense.
I laughed really hard when there was a tweet sent out and she responded and said like, oh, they laughed really hard about my cannoli joke, and then you put that gif of just like people like looking like, yeah, no, like, I was like dying. I was like, yeah, because that was probably like the legitimate reaction. That was mine,
Right.
Like I was just stone cold quiet. I was like just looking at her like, dude, really? Like, come on.
I think when she said it, we were like kind of like
I was waiting for like a
smiling.
punchline. Like, is there something else coming after that? Like,
It was like when a 4-year-old tells you a joke, you're like, yeah, I'll laugh just to be nice, ha ha ha. Like,
Right. Okay, now what's next on the agenda? We just moved on past it. Can you imagine the chant though? Isaias Cannoli.
I can't. I'm gonna block that from my
Okay.
memory right now.
You put it out the universe, Charlie. That's just gonna happen now. It's gonna be part of this heel heat.
Great.
All right, so we recently, one of the things that I've noticed, obviously, because like I said, you caught my attention, and I started seeing you at freelance, and I was like, why is he out there? Like, I wouldn't see him in other places.
Yeah.
But now I slowly see you being on other promotions and traveling a little bit. Like, is that a personal decision? You're just, working your way there? Like, what's your...
It was actually a personal decision.
Yeah.
And if I'm being 100% transparent,
Yeah.
I had a good job, a steady job, and it was one that took a lot of time out of my schedule.
Okay.
And, with like insurance, like having insurance through my job and all sorts
Right.
of stuff,
Yeah.
I wasn't allowed to take time off, and I would work weird days. It would be Monday through Thursday. I would have Friday off, work Saturday, and then have Sunday off.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah, Saturday's a hard day because you need that day.
Me driving anywhere
Right,
would
uh-huh.
like me driving 6+ hours or
Right.
like flying somewhere like is gonna be it's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
So it came to a point in time when like I started getting all these booking inquiries, and
Okay.
people were asking me like, "Hey, you want to work here? You want to work here?" And the training school and everything, and being a trainer there, and I just told myself, I was like, I feel like right now is as good as any if
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to gamble on myself and try to take a shot at this.
Absolutely.
And I quit my job.
Okay.
And as soon as I quit my job, I started accepting all these other bookings.
Okay.
And honestly, that's like a legit. Like that's all I'm doing right now is just wrestling.
Okay.
And
That's awesome.
The training school, like
Yeah.
it's been working out because I quit my job back in spring, and I've been supporting myself ever since then. With just
Absolutely.
like on wrestling, so it's kind of cool to be able to say that, like, hey, like it can happen if you work hard enough and you put yourself in the right position. And,
Right.
Put yourself out there. But yeah, for the longest, I was just wrestling here at freelance. I was busy with work, and
Right.
I play hockey as a hobby as well too. So I was like doing all that and just trying to balance everything out. So
Yeah. That's, I mean, I think we applaud your courage because Chris is an entrepreneur.
That's awesome.
Like,
Yeah, fucking tough, bro.
Yeah,
Oh, it is,
exactly.
yeah. Oh, trust me, it's nervous sometimes when you're just
weird,
like,
yeah.
I don't know if I'm gonna cover everything this month, but let's see. And
Yeah.
then it happens, and you're
Yeah.
even more proud of yourself. You're like, hey, that's awesome. Like I was able to do it. So
Yeah, that's cool. And I think that I don't know if that like the narrative of that, the narrative of Isaias is so damn good. Why don't we see him in other places? I think was a compliment. So I don't know if that's like if you. I just want you to know that when
Yeah.
people, I think when people say that, it's not like it's meant to be bad. It's meant to be like we see
he's so good.
Isaias.
The world needs to see him.
We
Like,
see how good Isaias is,
Mm-hmm.
and like he could go with all these other people. Like
Yeah.
we've seen him go with Leo Rush, who has been a cruiserweight champion,
Yeah.
and we've seen him put on an awesome match with him. So that's where kind of that comes from.
yeah,
if you know what I mean.
Oh no, and I 100% like appreciate that, and it wasn't what really kind of like weighed me to do the decision that I did was I had people like Ali, Kylie, and Ethan Page.
Yeah.
All three of them said like in different conversations, not knowing what each one of them said, but they all told me the same thing, and they're like, "Hey, you need to take this seriously because you're good enough to make a living off of this." And it was basically the three of them kind of just like getting into my ear and be like, you know what, I should just try it. And, it paid off. And
Right.
I thank them all the time, for giving me the courage and
Absolutely.
having the confidence in me to like, that I can do this. So,
Yeah. And I think Ethan Page said something on the vlog.
yeah. Which I tell them all the time. I said that as a joke. And it caught on, and then I remember I messaged him one time because he switched it to vlog.
Yeah,
That's the name
Vlog
of his
now.
thing. It's
Yeah.
the vlog.
Yeah.
So I messaged him like, "Hey man, you're welcome for the new name, by the way."
Yeah. What a way to differentiate, right? Just put a hyphen in there, and
Yeah.
it becomes a completely different
exactly.
thing. Yeah.
Right.
You mentioned hobbies. You do
Yeah.
also another thing that you do, and correct me if I'm wrong. You also do gear,
Yes, I do. Yeah.
and I'm not 100% sure, but I think we follow the handle that you have for the gear that you make.
Yeah, that's I do,
Oh, do we?
gear as a side thing. It's just something that I did because I remember when I ordered my initial set of gear from a gear maker, which I will not say who it was. But I remember I waited about 8 months, and when I finally got it, it was nothing like I wanted, nothing at all whatsoever, and I was frustrated. And I remember showing it to my mom, and I remember my mom was like, "Well, I have let's go buy a sewing machine. I know how to sew with a sewing machine. I could teach you if you want to just do it yourself."
Oh, snap.
And literally, I taught myself how to do it through years of frustration and throwing fabric to the wall and almost breaking my sewing machine and stuff like that.
Okay.
But yeah, that's I started doing that, and then for the longest, I was doing that through college and
Nice.
through my wrestling career, and took a little break from it when I was working full time.
Yeah.
And right now, that's one of the things that supports my income monthly.
Cool.
It's just doing gear, and it's one of those where I don't promote it personally
Right.
because I want to keep that separate from myself.
Yeah.
I don't want people to think oh well, Isaias is only getting booked because he's making gear for so and so. It's no,
Sure.
that's never the case. I always try to separate everything. Hence why I have a different handle for for that.
And it's even to the point that I wasn't even 100% sure. That
I
it
didn't
was
even
you.
know that. This is news to me.
Oh, there
So,
you go.
yeah.
Yeah, and
You're
that's
keeping
what,
it separate.
and when everyone asks me the people that I make gear for, I always tell them hey, if anybody ever asks you for gear, send them to that.
Yeah.
The Instagram handle. It's Fuerza Athletes.
Force athletes, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the Twitter handle and or the Twitter. Yeah, it's on
Instagram.
Twitter too.
Oh, it's on Twitter?
Yeah, and on Instagram.
Yeah.
But I always tell people go through there because to me that's business. That's a separate business than me wrestling.
Yeah,
Right.
for
So
sure.
I always tell people please separate the two. Don't put me together. Oh, that's the guy that makes gear. That's the wrestler that makes gear. I never want to be known as that.
Yeah.
I just,
Yeah.
that's my job. It's almost to the point where oh well, so and so works at PetSmart. And it's oh, that's the wrestler who works at PetSmart. At PetSmart, it's no, it's you two different
Yeah, two
things.
different-
Or
yeah.
you're a lawyer. You're oh, it's the lawyer that wrestles. No, it's you're a lawyer and you're a wrestler.
Yeah.
It's two different things. That's my job. So
Right.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it seems like there's. I mean, this is just from what I see on Twitter, but it seems like people have had some bad gear experiences. So
It
seems like
ton.
there's a role to fill.
There's
there,
there's a ton, and I know me personally, I try to be upfront with everyone, and I think that's the biggest thing that happens with a lot of gear makers.
Okay.
And from what I heard, stories, because like how I told you, like I've only dealt with a gear maker once in my life, and
Yeah.
then after that, I decided to do it on my own.
Sure.
But from what like all the stories that I hear is just the gear makers are not upfront and honest with the people.
Okay.
And I know whenever I tell people, like whenever they ask me about something, I'll be like, hey man, like I'm gonna tell you right now, it's gonna take me 6 months to get this to you, or it's gonna take me 2 weeks, or like, hey, like I
Yeah.
can't do it, or it's gonna cost
Absolutely.
this much, or like, yeah, I can't do this, or I can't do that. Like I'll be upfront with them, and I'll tell them like, yeah, I can't do this, or yes, I can do it. And I know a lot of them respect that.
Right, because I mean,
Yeah.
you as a wrestler, you know how important that is.
Yeah, and it's
you
like,
value that.
Yeah, exactly. And
Right.
like I've even told people, I'm like, hey, you know what? It's probably best if you go to somebody else because I won't be able to do this. Like I'll be upfront with them, and that's a lot of the people that I go to. Like they respect that, and they always tell everyone else, like, hey, he's upfront with you. Like you're probably going to wait this long, and you're probably going to pay this much, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
And that's I've heard that from other people getting their money stolen, where like
Yikes.
they pay for gear and they never hear from the person again.
Ugh.
And
That
or
sucks.
they pay for gear and then they get their stuff and it's mismeasured and they're like, hey man, like it doesn't fit, and they're like, oh, what's your problem now? And it's like, that's messed up. Like,
That
or they
sucks.
say like, yeah, I'll get you your stuff in 2 weeks. 9 months later, oh yeah, I just couldn't do your stuff. Like, and again, it's not a knock at anybody, but those are the stories that I heard. So
Right.
like I don't know specifically who has done all these things, but those are just stories that
Right.
I've heard, and I
Yeah.
could be completely wrong, but I feel like just the communication with a lot of gear makers is where a lot of people get that stigma of like a bad name.
Absolutely. I think the key word is, you're hitting it. In life, the key word is expectations.
Yes.
You set the right ones, and no one's disappointed. And
Exactly,
like,
yeah.
I know. This is something, Chris and I, we have to make clients happy, and I think
Yep.
that's
There you go.
something we've learned, too. So, recap, you're on your own now.
Mm-hmm.
Wrestling different places a lot. Making gear when you can. Supporting yourself. You're going to Canada Sunday, correct?
Yeah,
Or is that tomorrow?
that's
What
tomorrow.
day is it?
Tomorrow. yeah.
Today's Saturday.
Today's Saturday.
How many beers have you had?
Just one so far, but hey, they're IPAs. And is that your first time at Alpha One?
First time at Alpha One, yes.
Okay, cool.
Third time, fourth time, third or fourth time in Canada.
Okay.
Yeah, the last time was with Superkicked.
Nice,
With
yeah.
Freelance, we did Superkicked versus Freelance.
That's right.
On
Yep.
a Thursday for that SummerSlam weekend.
Cool.
And then I was able to wrestle on their Friday show as well, which was amazing.
Okay.
And I can't say enough good things about Superkick. Those guys are all awesome.
Yeah, I hear
they're-
great things
They're
about- I
really
haven't heard
cool
a bad
guys.
thing.
Yeah, very hospitable, and yeah, just awesome.
Have you
guys.
ever been down to Mexico for?
Yes,
Yeah.
I have. Yeah, I wrestled again through Freelance. I did by myself with Ace Austin. We went down
okay,
and we
cool.
did a DTU, a tour of DTU,
Oh, yes,
and I was
yeah.
down there for Thursday all the way through Monday, and it was awesome time. Like just being able to wrestle in front of a lucha libre crowd, and it was a little scary at times too because that's when I hurt my rotator cuff. So like I was a little timid to like go all out, but then the last day of the tour. I was like, you know what? If I'm gonna hurt myself, I'm gonna hurt myself on the last day. I have nothing else to do, so I went crazy and I did all sorts of stuff, and I was able to achieve one of my bucket list goals, and that was to get money thrown at me in Mexico. At a
Ooh.
lucha libre. Yeah, so
Nice.
and yeah, I didn't even expect it to happen. The match was over, and I was standing in the middle of the ring, and I just felt something hit my leg, and I turned around, and I just see little kids and adults throwing money, and I was like, oh, this is awesome, like, perfect. I was like, perfect way to end. Like, it was cool.
And so, you mentioned that that small injury in Mexico.
Yeah.
You also had a big injury at Gali,
Oh yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Can you talk
yeah.
a little bit about that?
So, it was, I want to say 2 years ago. I want to say, was it?
Like about 2.5. Something
Yeah,
like
August
that.
27th or 26th, one of the 2 days. Yeah, it was just a mishap in the ring, just a freak accident where I went for a flapjack, a move that I've done a million times. And since I'm one of the smaller guys that wrestle, I always have bigger guys like, hey man, just launch me in the air and throw me as high as you can, and I'll just I'll just eat shit. I don't know. Oh, can you swear on here? I'm sorry.
yeah.
Okay, cool.
How it goes.
I'll just throw me in the air and I'll just eat crap on the ground.
Eat crap.
And we went for it, and I went straight to the ground head first,
Okay.
And I got thrown I was probably like in the air for like up in 7 feet in the air and
Okay.
landed straight head first, instantly knocked out.
Oh.
All I remember is getting tossed in the air, looking at the mat, seeing the gray mat, and then just telling myself this is not going to end well.
Oh.
And the next thing I know, I wake up and I see James and GPA over me by the ring, and they're like, "Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay?" And I'm just like, "What happened?" And like I'm in the locker room, and they're just like, "You the dude you landed on your head," and and I was just like, "Oh," and like James will tell you this story a million times. We're gonna call the ambulance. No, don't. We're gonna call the ambulance. Don't. I'm fine. I've had a concussion before. I'll be okay. And like I argued with him for 20 minutes, and he was like, okay, we're not gonna call the ambulance, but you need to chill out and just relax. And if anything happens, like anything weird happens, we're gonna call the ambulance.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, that's fine. And I remember Barry Wright being there too. And
This was mid-show, right?
yeah, I think this was the first match.
Oh, was it the first
Yeah.
match?
And I remember like sitting up, and Barry Wright was there, and he's like, "You feeling better?" I'm like, "Yeah, I think I feel okay." And I just remember this excruciating sharp pain, like a baseball bat was hitting me right in the lower back.
Oh god.
And like I seized, like my back seized up, and I laid down on the ground. I'm like, "Yep, that's not a good idea." And I passed out again, and I woke up, and they were over me, and they told me like, "You just had a seizure. GPH just called the ambulance. They're on the
shit.
way." And like, I remember when he was like, I called the ambulance. I was like, "You fucking asshole." So like, whenever I tell him anything right now, I always call him an asshole, and he like it's just like a little callback to like that day. He was just like, he's like, "Yeah, this asshole called saved your life," and I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, I was in the ICU for 2 days.
Yikes.
Sunday night and Monday.
Okay.
They kept me. Did CT scans, MRI scans, and like the doctor said, like, "Hey, there's like, had I not known that you had fallen the way that you did, I would say that you were like 100% healthy. Like, there's nothing wrong with you or anything
Right.
like that." So that was my 6th concussion that I've ever had.
Okay.
But yeah, that was a big injury, and the doctor even told me when I did a follow up, they're like, "You're gonna be able to do physical activity in like 6 months."
Okay.
And that included like working out and just doing anything physical. So I told him, I was like, "Hey, can I like possibly do my own rehab?" Because my shoot job before was I'm a personal trainer.
Okay.
And I have a background in rehabilitation and prehab.
Sure.
So I was asking him, I was like, "Hey, I have this, I'm certified, whatever. Can I do my own rehab?" And he was like, "Sure, but please be careful." I'm like, okay. So 2 months later, or like a month later, I come back, and he's like, they would do like an evaluation, like an A, B, C, D, F.
Yeah.
Right. And they did an evaluation on me, and they're like,
Is
"Yeah,
this just testing mental
like
acuity or-
physical, mental
Okay.
and like physical, like
Okay.
everything overall."
Yeah.
And the first month they're like, "Oh, we're gonna give you a C. Like you're okay, you're doing well, but like you're like right on track for progression, like to like get back into everything in 6 months." I'm like, okay. So a month and a half later, I go back and I go through everything,
Yeah.
and the doctor looks at me and he's just like, "What were you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, this is what I was doing," and like I wrote everything out. Like I have big OCD, so
Yeah.
like I wrote everything out. I was like, "Here, this is what I was doing," blah blah blah, whatever, and I explained everything to him. He was like, "All right," and I'm like, "Why? What's wrong?" And I was like, "What? Like you're looking at me like something's wrong?" He's just like, "I'm giving you an A."
Okay.
And I'm like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, I don't know what you did, but I'm gonna go ahead and clear you to go back to physical activity."
Oh, cool.
And like, he gave me 6 months, and in 2.5 months, I was able to get back to everything.
That's
so.
that's the John Cena style.
That's what everyone told me. They're like, "Oh, you recovered so quick." Like, "What did you do?" I was like, "I don't know. Like, I just did all these
I
exercises."
channeled my inner Cena. I watched a
pretty
bunch of his
much.
movies. I watched him win a bunch of titles.
Yep. Pretty much.
That was the rehab.
But yeah, that was the biggest injury I've had. It was very scary.
That sounds scary.
The
Absolutely.
doctor said that I could have been paralyzed from the neck down. So
Woo. So are you still doing flapjacks to this day, or no
Nope,
no
not
more
at all.
flapjacks?
No.
All right.
somebody calls it, I'll be like, "Yep, I'll be leaving." See you later.
Cool. There's a match coming up. Probably won't have a flapjack in it now that you just said that story. But I was told that it was actually a dream match before it was booked, and that is a match you have upcoming with Alex Shelley.
Yep.
Was that correct in saying that is in your dream match category, even before like it was a possibility?
That is 100% correct.
Okay.
I know. He doesn't know this, and I plan on telling him. Hopefully after the match, if it goes well.
Okay.
But he's had AJ Styles back when he was Prince Devitt, Finn Balor,
Yes.
Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, trying to miss, and Alex Shelley. Like, they've had humongous influences on my wrestling career. Even down to, like, the reason why I wear one gauntlet and one armband is because I saw Alex Shelley doing it, and it looked really cool. And I was like, hey, man, I'm going to adopt that and, you know, make it into my own, too. And just the way that he is, like, as a wrestler, just, like, overall, just, like, selling, technical, like, just technical wrestling and just, like, everything, overall, everything. It just looks so natural to him. And he's like a big influence, and I literally just watch a ton of his matches all the time, and just his New Japan stuff, his TNA, Impact, all that stuff, and just the things that he does on the indies, like PWG and all that. Like, I just watch a lot of that stuff, and that was always a match that I wanted to have. And I remember there was a small time, and I could be wrong, but I feel like he like stepped away from wrestling to pursue his like actual career. And at that point, when I saw him like leave wrestling, I was like, well, that's never going to happen. That's just one of those dream matches that, you know, it's always just going to like fall away. And then, you know, I saw that he came back to wrestling, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And then, you know, somebody approached me, and they're like, hey, what's one of your dream matches? And I was like, oh, Alex Shelley would be amazing. I think it was actually on the road trip to Canada for Super Kicked. We talked about it in the car. And the right person heard it, and then they were just like, hey, guess what? You're going to wrestle Alex Shelley in January. I'm like, what the hell? I'm like, are you serious? And they're like, yep. So, yeah, I've been prepping for that one. You know, just he's amazing at chain wrestling, and I want to try to be able to keep up with him. So hopefully I do that, and, you know. So.
And that list you were saying, those are very high work rate people, and I think that when I watch you, my biggest takeaway, and I think your strongest asset, is just your work rate and your ability to, like, the wrestling part of wrestling. And ability. So have you always been attracted to people who can just really go in the ring and work a wrist lock, etc., things like that?
Yeah. So I'm really big on just making things mean something, as opposed to just going in there and be like, all right, well, we're going to do this and that. And I have no ill will, or I'm not talking bad about anyone when I say that people just go in there and just do things for the sake of doing things. There's a time and a place, and there's an audience for that. But for me, just personally, like, you know, I've had plenty of injuries, and I try to take care of myself a little bit more. And I found that switching my wrestling style to making something along those lines, where making a wrist lock or a headlock means something more, has brought me more satisfaction. And again, and it kind of goes back to like that whole entire like feud that I had with Pat. That was one of the things where I kind of tested that, and made things mean something, and it worked out. And, you know, I got more satisfaction out of that. And, you know, back in the day, that's when I was just like the typical stereotypical baby face. I really didn't have a character. So I had to rely on my wrestling skill and ability to get me over with fans. So it meant me going out there and murdering myself. And that's when I literally had all these injuries from head to toe. Like broken fingers, broken wrists, like all sorts of stuff, like concussions. That's where I got a majority of my concussions, was just going out there and going nuts. And it wasn't until that injury that I told you guys about, that's when it kind of just everything clicked, like, hey, man, you need to slow down. Like, and you need to change something up, because obviously something's not right. And that's when I changed everything. But yeah, that's one of the things that I really do enjoy, is like guys like that. Oh, and another guy too is like Johnny Gargano. Like those guys are like, his stuff in NXT is amazing. Johnny Gargano is really good. I watch a lot of his stuff, and AJ Styles too. That guy is, I don't know how old that guy is, but he's still going. Like,
he looks like
when he first started. Like, I just see him take some of the things that he takes, and I'm like, why? Like, holy cow, how is he still doing this? Like, at this age, like, it's awesome. It's just like, that's a compliment too. Like, it's
absolutely
just, it's amazing. So
So no luchador influence at all?
I do have some. I did train lucha libre for about like a summer with someone's like particular, like his name is Yakuza. Like, he wrestles at like lucha libre total, I think it is what it's called. Because he, like, I started at Windy City, and I remember he randomly moved to the States from Mexico, and he joined with the school, and the promoter was like, hey, you speak Spanish? I'm like, yeah. He's like, can you come in on Wednesdays and work with this lucha guy who doesn't speak a lick of English? I'm like, sure. He was like, yeah, he wants to learn American style, and he said in exchange he'll teach you lucha libre. And I'm like, all right. So that was like my influence. But I can't specifically name like one luchador at all
Yeah.
whatsoever. But I do watch lucha libre. Like I watched it as a kid, growing up, like on Sundays and Saturdays, and watching it, like in the arena and all that stuff.
Right.
And yeah, like some of the things that the luchadors do is just insane. Like guys like, I know they're more mainstream now, but like Penta and Phoenix are like amazing. It's just like the stuff that they do is
Right.
off the walls.
Yeah, literally off of wall.
Yeah.
Oh boy, there's a lot of good stuff on here still. I don't know
boy.
exactly where. To
Well, we
put
got
it.
the Elena Black joke out of the way, so I'm good. Whatever else you got for me.
There's been a couple matches. I think they both took place in this year, where specifically you wrestled Kylie.
Yes.
So I know, obviously, everyone can see the emotion after that the matches took place. Now that both of those matches have happened, they were really awesome matches, and you probably had a little time to at least like reflect on that and organize the thoughts in your head. What have those matches meant to you?
They mean a lot.
Yeah.
More than I could ever express and say into words. Mm-hmm. Being able to go in there with your best friend and put on a match, and both of them meant a lot, because I know the first one was when I lost the title to her,
Right.
freelance
and
title,
it
yeah.
was. I remember I was so nervous that day. I was trying to keep myself as like calm as possible, but all I wanted to do was give her a good match, because it was like, hey, you're taking this thing, and I just want it to be good. Like, I don't want it to be like, oh, well, yeah, she won, but that match was, oh, man.
Yeah.
And, again, like I always said, she's my best friend, so, like, I want to do the best that I possibly can for her.
Yeah.
And just, like, looking back at that match, it was cool, and I can't say enough, and I've told her this, too. Some of my favorite matches, or most of my favorite matches, if not all, involve me losing.
Okay.
And
Yeah, that makes sense.
I rank both matches with Kylie and the match with Ali when I lost the title. I
The
told
triple
her,
threat one?
No, just
okay.
one-on-one.
Oh,
when
yeah, I
lost
remember.
it.
Yeah.
I remember when he beat me. I remember looking up at the crowd, and everyone was standing and cheering and going nuts.
Yeah.
And then the same thing happened when she beat me, and like everyone was standing and cheering and going nuts. And I remember just being in the ring and like watching like everyone go crazy and smiling on the inside, and then just looking at her and just like seeing how much she appreciated, because she loves wrestling.
Yeah.
And just seeing her like legitimately crying, just being happy and stuff. That was amazing. And then the second match with her at the War of the Genders, or I think it was
Right.
called.
Yeah, that was kind of different, because when she won not to cut you off, because I want you to
Yeah.
pick up where you left off, but like when winning the freelance title, that was kind of her rise to the top before she left. And then with Game of Genders, you're like ushering her back almost, kind of like, wasn't that kind of like a welcome back?
It was
so it's a different feeling,
and
probably.
yeah, that's what it was. It was awesome to be a part of that, and to be able to be the match that she came back to. And it was, I feel like it was a spur of the moment. I don't know if they talked about it, but it was like a spur of the moment.
Yeah,
thing,
Nas was on recently, and he kind of said it was maybe settled like the day of or the day before, or something like that.
And it was just one of those things, and just to be able to be a part of it, and like to give her that match too, and just it was just awesome. Just I remember being in the ring, and when she came out and seeing everyone just like.
And then you guys didn't do nothing for the next 10 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't have to. Like, we didn't have to. I was just like, these people, like, and I mean this in a nice way, but I was like, these people won't shut up. Like, they're so happy to see her. Like,
Yeah.
it was amazing. It's just like, I remember being in the ring, and like, she came out, and just hearing the reaction that she got, I remember like starting to tear up, because I was just happy, because again, she's like my best friend, and it's just awesome to see her like do all that. And then like looking at Andy Long, and I was like I started tearing up, and I was like, oh crap. And he was like, you all right? I'm like, yeah. And then I went out, and but yeah, like we, it was in a very emotional match, and it was fun. And afterwards, like I was waiting for her by the curtain when the match was over, and she went up to me and just like looked at me, and I was like, hey, are you okay? And she just gave me this face and just started crying, and I couldn't help it anymore, and I just started crying too. Went over there and just like hugged her and kissed her, and I told her that I loved her, and it was awesome. It was amazing. I loved it. It was really cool, and I was like honored to be able to give her that match and be a part of it.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
no, thanks for sharing that with us. That
Yeah.
sounds...
And now both of you guys are 2-time freelance champions.
We are, yeah. Somebody, one of the students, Trevor Outlaw, he came up to me. He was like, "Hey," because he calls me his dad because I'm his wrestling
dad.
and he calls Kylie his wrestling mom.
Okay.
So he was like, "Hey, mom's a 2-time freelance champion now too," and I'm like, "You know what, man? Like that is like me and her stand in that category alone, and I'm perfectly happy with it. It's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah,
That's
it's
cool.
awesome.
Speaking of the students, how are you faring, like being a trainer and like your trainer role at the academy specifically? How's that going?
Love it.
Yeah.
It is the most fulfilling thing that I've done in a long time.
Okay.
It's just being able to see those students go from not even knowing how to run the ropes for the first day to like coming up to me like, "Hey, can you watch this match of mine that I had?" And like being able to watch them like wrestle and apply everything that that they've gone through, because I've seen
Nice.
their struggles.
Yeah.
Like I've seen the struggles of them trying to get into like the role that they want to be in, and then for them to like go out there and have their first match like on the freelance pre-shows and like see the reactions that the fans give them and stuff like that. That's more of a reward than anything else. It's just I'm more happy for them sometimes than I feel like they are for themselves. And I know in a promo, and that's just because it was a promo, like I called Dean Jacobs and Ashton Braven my 2 top students, but in reality, like all of them are like my top, I'm proud of every single one of them.
Right.
And yeah, and the community that we have at the school, it's just formed into its own like family thing where like everyone supports everyone cheers everyone. Like if somebody is like not being able to finish drills, somebody will jump in and finish the drill with them, or if not, everybody will jump in and finish the drill with that person. And
That's
it's
awesome.
it's really cool. It's very friendly, and even when somebody joins for the first time, you could tell that they're intimidated with everyone. And
I'm sure.
Everyone starts joking with them and like, "Hey man, like you're part of this family now. You chose to be with us, so you're going to be a part of it." And they, by the end of the day, everyone like, that person will come up to me like, "Hey man, thank you. Like you guys really made me feel welcomed."
Yeah.
That's good to hear, man.
It's awesome. Like we have a really good thing coming and going with like me and Bryce Benjamin. Like
Yeah.
it's awesome. Like we're both very proud of everyone.
That's
Very
great.
proud.
You're if the listeners, if your heart just isn't welling up, like I feel like this has been such in a good way, like an emotional episode, like so many like love for your partner, your best friend, someone you wrestled, like putting people over, and then like love for students. Like this episode is warming my heart.
Oh well, there you go. And everybody thinks that I'm a dick. That's probably why I'm a really good like jerk, like a heel, because
Yeah.
deep down inside I just try to be, and that's one of the things that I teach going back to the students. I tell them all the time. I'm like, "Hey guys, if anything else, if I could teach you anything like that you could leave here with, is like just be a good human being, please." And I just I legit try to be a good human being every single day of my life. Like I know I'm not perfect, but
Right.
I just try to be the best that I can and just try to be nice to everyone.
Absolutely.
And yeah.
Yeah, no one's perfect, and but your intention and heart is in the right place. So 2020.
Yep.
The rumor is it's going to be a big year for everyone. That's the rumor. Ask James about it.
That's the rumor, huh?
That's the
Yeah,
rumor.
that's rumors. Big year,
That's the
2020.
first
big.
one. That's the first time I heard about that. So.
Big year. What do you have any short-term and long-term goals for 2020? This can be anything really simple, or it can be something extravagant. There is no wrong goal or way to answer this.
Couple of goals. I would like to go ahead and branch out and wrestle in a couple more different places that I haven't been able to wrestle in
Okay.
across the country, which would be cool.
Okay.
Going back to the school, I would
Yeah,
love
your faction, right? Name the school.
No, not the school.
I'm just kidding.
I'm leaving. I would love for every student at the Freelance Academy to be wrestling matches.
Okay.
And
I like that.
I flat out told all of them too, one of my dreams is to be able to look at a freelance show one day and almost every match have one of the students in that match.
Okay. Just a card full of former students from the academy.
just basically because they've put themselves in that position, and
Right.
just because they're part of the freelance academy, like that doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, you're going to get a spot on the show. Like, no, they still have to work for it. So,
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
all the students that you do see on the show, they worked for that spot.
Yeah, expectation setting.
Exactly. Yeah. So, just being able to see the school grow, expand more, freelance get bigger than what it is now. Like I feel
Yeah.
like it's at a rise, like it's booming right now.
There are some things that happened last night that, the needle. I think the needle was moved in terms of just potential, like
Yeah.
new people showing up.
Yeah.
like the Cody mention. The needle is
Yeah.
is if it's a speedometer, it's like flickering towards the higher
Yeah.
miles per hour rate.
and
It's
exactly
getting up
what
there.
exactly what you said,
Yeah.
like that whole Matt Nix being on TV thing, and
Yeah.
then that whole. I
Freelance
feel like
chat.
that showed Chicago and that showed the country, if not the world, like, hey, like this small Indian in Chicago, Illinois, where Matt Nix created just because he wanted a place for all his friends to wrestle and have a good time.
I know. I love that quote too. It's
Is
such a-
now
yeah.
something that people are aware of, and to have a crowd at the Sears Center chant freelance wrestling for a quote unquote unknown person in Matt Nix
Yeah.
is amazing.
really
And I
is.
know me personally, like I teared up and I was so proud of him. And I messaged him and I told him, like, dude, this is awesome. And he was like, yeah, we did it. And I was like, oh, well, you did it. Like, this is all the hard work that you paid off. He's like, nah. He's like, we did it. He's like, this whole team did it. Like, we made this.
Right.
So I feel like that's like the leaning towards more our side now.
Yeah.
That being said, what does freelance mean to you?
Home.
Freelance is home.
Yeah.
It's not just a hashtag.
No, it's not a. It's that. It was funny because it's a hashtag and it's like a saying that everyone says, like, "Oh, freelance is home." To a lot of us, it's legit. That's what it is to us.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've said it on another podcast before, and I told Matt Nix like straight to his face, if it wasn't for freelance, I was going to quit wrestling, and if it wasn't for freelance, I would not be wrestling right now.
Yeah.
And I remember Matt Nix came up to me and he told me, he's like, hey, can you wrestle my show? I'm like, sure. I was like, I'm probably going to quit soon, so like, I'll just do this one and that's fine. He's like, all right. And I wrestled this show and he was like, hey, can you wrestle another one? I'm like, yeah, sure. And then,
See the irony?
and then
We're-
I told
we're
him,
at Freelance Underground now, and it's one more round.
yeah. And it, and then I told him, I was like, hey man, at the end of the year, I'm probably gonna quit. I just want you to know, like, I don't know. And then I was like, I just feel like I've done everything that I'm going to do. And I remember he just came up to me. He's like, I just want you to know that I feel like no one has ever used you to their full potential, and I want to do that with you, if as best as I possibly can.
Yeah.
And I remember him telling me, and this is really weird because like the Ace of Freelance nickname,
Yep.
that was legitimately given to me by the fans and by the bookers that ran the show. I never called myself that.
Okay.
They called me that. Like,
Right.
so that's a legit nickname that was given to me.
Yeah.
And I remember, that was given to me maybe like 2 years ago.
Right.
I remember Matt Nix legit came up to me, and he came up to me and he was like, hey, when I was having that conversation with him, telling him that I wanted to quit, I was like, yeah, I want you to, like, when people think of freelance, I want them to think of you.
Yeah.
I want you to be my ace. He flat out said that. Little did we know that would eventually turn into something and be my nickname down the line. But yeah, like, I was like, yeah, that's fine. And he was like, yeah, I want you to be my first champion and everything. And I'm like, all right, cool. And then as I went with everything, I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to stick around. Like, it's kind of fun. It's fun for me again. Like, I want to keep wrestling.
That's awesome.
And now I'm here talking to you guys at Freelance Underground and
Wrestling Alex Shelley in January.
wrestling Alex Shelley in January for a match I never thought I was going to have. Wrestled my best friend
Yeah.
2 times.
Tearjerkers,
Wrestled, a guy who's on TV now, being the head of SmackDown,
Yeah.
training school full of new kids to take over freelance, and it's awesome. It's an awesome ride, and I'm so happy and I'm thankful for freelance. Like, I can't. That's why I tell Nick, I tell Nick all the time, I will do anything you ask me to do, and I mean it. So
Yeah.
he's done a lot for me. So
That's such a touching story because I think he would say the same thing too. Like, he wanted to quit, So it's saved.
Yeah.
It's saved a bunch of.
Yeah.
It's really saved up your passion and like something that is so important to you. And
Ali said it too. Ali flat out said, he was like, if it wasn't for freelance, I would have stopped wrestling. So it's freelance has saved a lot of people.
yeah,
And
God,
it's-
that's
it's our home.
fulfilling.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Man,
All right. I mean, I can't think we can end it on a higher note than
no,
that.
and there's literally nothing else on the agenda. I was erasing things as we were saying them, and my slate is blank.
Cool. Well,
I want to thank you so much for opening up to us. Like,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and being transparent. And things
Yeah,
like
absolutely. Yeah. Like I told you, I just try to be a good human and just tell it like it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Well, thanks for being a good human and an awesome wrestler.
thank you.
That's all I got. Yeah. Isaias, do you want to drop your social media handles?
Yeah, everyone hates me because my social media handles are like extremely difficult.
Okay.
But it's the same for Twitter and Instagram. I deactivated my Facebook, so I'm not on Facebook anymore.
Okay.
I just got tired. It takes up too much time.
No, I hear
Yeah.
ya. I understand. It's got
You start scrolling, and the next thing you know, there's an hour away from your day. So
yeah, exactly.
Instagram and Twitter are at Deja Vu, DAZEZHAVOO.
okay.
And yeah, that's pretty much that's where you can find me.
Yeah, thanks for being a good human.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, man.
Woo, that was fun.